As Donald Trump continues to aggressively attempt to rewrite history regarding the 2020 election, which he tried to steal after he lost it fair and square, one of the biggest podcasters in the world, Joe Rogan, who I would argue is instrumental in getting Trump back to the White House, is actually calling Trump out for his 2020 election lies. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as we've talked about extensively, we've been tracking Donald Trump and Joe Rogan's tumultuous political relationship and just how much MAGA Rogan is. Now, I would argue that Rogan has drifted to the right. He has helped launder and sanitize much of Trump's worst impulses and excesses. He interviewed Trump. It was a softball interview. It was wildly popular. And all of these things contributed to normalizing Trump and creating a permission structure where it would be okay for people to vote for Trump, right, or to feel okay. Since Trump has been inaugurated for the second time, Rogan has become increasingly critical. Now, he also kisses Trump's ass still at certain points on certain things, but he's become increasingly critical over his censoriousness and cruel and draconian immigration policy, things of that nature. And as we'll discuss along the way, I still think it's important to see where these wildly influential podcasters and influencers end up regarding Trump. So with that in mind, let's hear what Joe Rogan has to say about Trump's 2020 election lies.
He was calling these senators and congresspeople going to cheer on these brave senators and congresspeople.
That's great. On PBS? That's nuts.
Bro, by the way, he's being sarcastic. He doesn't want to cheer on the brave senators.
Right.
He wants to scare them with a mob of people.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
be real about both
true.
things. Let's be real about both things. But he's also saying they stole the fucking election. And I feel like if you say that, you've got to have some like really good evidence that you could give out. Like if you said to me, if I ran for president and I told you, dude, they stole the election, and you're like, how? I would have an answer. I'd have an answer. No one has an answer. There's no documentary that's really good. Like no one's like put together like a rock solid, peer-reviewed, paper-supported documentary. This is exactly what happened. This is how they stole the election. We know that you can do this. We know they did this. We know that these things got dropped off. We know it didn't make any sense. We know there's dead people voted. We know there was ballots that were mail-in ballots that were brought in shipments, and all of them were for Biden.
And I should say that Trump repeatedly teased throughout 2021 and 2022 and 2023 that he would put together exactly such a document or presentation. I'm going to have a press conference. We're going to show how the 2020 election was rigged. And then he kept rescheduling it. And then finally he canceled it, and it was never brought up again. So to Joe Rogan's point, an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence, especially something as consequential as a presidential election. And what Rogan is saying is, well, it's kind of a clue, isn't it, that you make these claims and you're actually refusing to provide the evidence. Now, I would argue that Rogan is, again, a bit too skeptical, a bit too credulous, a bit too willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. The reason that Trump has never done this is because he's full of shit and he was lying from the beginning, and he was hoping people wouldn't expect proof for the claims and he could just gaslight you into believing that the election was stolen when it wasn't. Rogan seems to be finally seeing a bit of the light. Not that he was ever a full-blown election denialist, but again, he was just a bit too willing to entertain Trump's bullshit when none of it should have been entertained. But I digress. Let's continue.
Thousands of them, and they swung vote. Okay, if you have that, then you got to make a fucking documentary, a really good one, and put it out there so everybody can understand it. Because it's crazy that this is 4 years later and people are still saying that. Or you don't want to fix it because you monkey with the elections too. You know? And here, is there evidence of that? Well, I do know that a Republican company, who bought Dominion? Who bought the Dominion voting thing? I believe a GOP supporter bought the voting machines.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah. Like, hey.
So it's important. We talked about that. So Dominion Voting Systems, that was one of the companies that Trump targeted with his defamatory 2020 election lies. And they sued Fox News for signal boosting and regurgitating those defamatory election lies. And then Fox News had to settle. It was the biggest defamation settlement in American history. And Fox paid it $787.5 million, so $750 million that they paid. Well, unfortunately, fingers crossed, nothing happens. But Dominion was bought out by a Trump-aligned enterprise. That's what Joe Rogan is referring to. So, not suggesting that necessarily implicates the veracity or the future veracity of Dominion voting machines, but that's not great, right? That a group and a movement of election deniers and people who actually did try to steal an election have now bought a major voting machine company. We have to be vigilant. That's all I'm saying. Just keep an eye out. Let's continue.
So, it's one of two things is going on. Dominion voting system sold to company run by former Republican election official.
What?
Yeah.
This real sucks.
This is where it gets sus. I had Rep Luna on the podcast, and one of the things that she said that was really shocking, she said sometimes they don't want to fix things because they can campaign against them. Mm-hmm. I was like, what? No. They fundraise against them.
Of course, right? It's a wedge issue, right? That you want the problem, not the solution, particularly in Republican politics. So, again, I don't know if Rogan's being half sarcastic here or what, or if he's had an epiphany, but it seems to me that in addition to calling Trump out, what he's saying is Trump just wants to keep this as a wedge issue to galvanize his cultish base, which I think there is some substantial, evidence for that claim, that there's, that is a reasonable interpretation of why Trump does what he does. But election denialism and Trump's misgivings about the 2020 election have even manifested themselves in terms of judicial nominees, okay? Aaron Burnett on CNN put this together, and it's pretty stunning. I've heard a couple of examples, but once you see the numbers and the data, it's pretty shocking the number of Trump-appointed or Trump nominees for the judiciary, who are ultimately confirmed by the Republican majority, have to also indulge his lies about the 2020 election, and they get lifetime positions as a result. Take a look.
Every single one of President Trump's judicial nominees in his second term would not answer directly when asked under oath a very simple question: did President Trump lose the 2020 election? Instead, all 27 of them would only say that Joe Biden was certified the winner, which obviously is a dodge. And in many cases, they used nearly identical language, as you can see from the example that you're seeing here, right? It was President Biden was certified, was certified, President Biden was certified. Now, all of those are mirror images of each other. They also avoided answering direct questions about January 6th. Despite that, of the 27, 19 of them received Senate confirmation to serve lifetime appointments on the federal bench.
It's not like we expected these judges to talk at length about how Joe Biden won the 2020 election, but what we found was much more disturbing. The fact that not a single one would give a direct factual answer to us says that these were essentially used as political loyalty questions for these judges in order to survive in Trump world. You cannot exist in the Trump orbit. You cannot have a job. You cannot be promoted to another job if you do one of two things: say who won the 2020 election truthfully, or say what actually happened on January 6th. They're the two of the most big lies in American political history, and Trump would pull their nominations if they answered honestly.
Yes, he would. And when you combine that with the fact that he pardoned 1,500 January 6th insurrectionists, including the violent ones, when you consider the recent federal pardons, not that they have much weight to them because most of the people have not been prosecuted at the federal level, but the federal pardons for the co-conspirators for his various and sundry schemes to steal the 2020 election, like the fake elector scheme and the attempts to basically prevent the House of Representatives from certifying President Biden's victory. It's a full court press by Trump to rewrite history and to sanitize it. And again, Joe Rogan is deeply frustrating, and I understand why he pisses a lot of people off. He pisses me off. But given his influence and his platform, I think it would be much better if we try to find a way to build common ground with him and coax him back as far from the right as possible, even if we never get him on the left. That way, it would deprive the right and MAGA of a useful platform that could propel them back into power again, as I genuinely believe it did in 2024. So in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.